Joining me on the political panel is Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, Joe Hildebrand, Daily Telegraph columnist, 2GB host, Sky News commentator. So much I'm not going to spend the rest of the show telling you his many attributes.
Lovely to be here.
Michael Kroger, Australia Day, being killed by Labor politicians and corporations, but I don't hear them suggest a better way to celebrate what we have. I don't hear a word of celebration. Can you think of any other date that critics will then say, yes, I agree, Michael, I can celebrate this great country on that day as well?
No, because if you change Australia Day, Andrew, there's always going to be 2 days. One to celebrate the country as it is now, and one to celebrate what people think was our terrible history. So, but this is Australia Day shouldn't take it personally. I mean, Christmas Day is being cancelled, the Queen's birthday. This is all part of the left's campaign, with unwitting support from people on the right that should know better. This is all part of the left's campaign to destroy Western culture, to denigrate Western symbols, and to do anything they can to rip down the great country and the great society that so many people have built over the centuries here. You'd think we're one of the worst countries in the world. Well, this is one of the greatest countries that civilization has seen in its thousands of years of history, and it should be celebrated, Andrew. It's celebrated very loudly.
Well, I see many refugees trying to come here. I don't see any going the other way. Joe Hildebrand, can you tell me one date that anyone suggested where you will see, by my side, Lydia Thorpe there, Adam Bant there, all these kids that hate Australia, all singing how great it is to be Australian and waving their Australian flags. One date that they will agree is the day to celebrate.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? No one can actually agree on what the date should be. New Year's Day, obviously, is when we became the actual nation of Australia, the day that our federation became made real. And that's already a public holiday. And, of course, that's a day that a lot of people will be nursing sore heads and not feeling particularly patriotic, one would imagine. The thing about January 26th isn't so much the fact that that's when Arthur Phillip came into Sydney Cove with his rather bedraggled cargo of souls, and they started sort of crawling up the various goat tracks that now make up the Sydney CBD. The problem is that January 26th is just a really good day. It marks the end of the summer holidays for most people, so it's the last chance for people to sort of have a get-together. For people who've gone back to work already, they get a day off where they can recapture a bit of that summer holiday feeling. For kids, it's a moment just before you go back to school, and so it's just a really nice time of year. It's a good day to go and have a barbecue, and that's what most people do on Australia Day. This idea that everyone in Australia is going, rah, rah, yes, genocide, we came here and we wiped everybody else out.
I mean, it's just...
This is ridiculous. Most people probably wouldn't have even known the significance of it. It hasn't had that much significance since actual the colonisation itself. It's only really in the 20th century that it became a national thing. Before that, states had their own days. But it's just a really nice, laid-back, easygoing day. And so my personal preference, if we were going to have any changes at all, I don't like tearing things down. I like building them. And I think Noel Pearson's idea of having maybe a joint celebration of the 25th and the 26th, celebrating Indigenous culture, and then the arrival of the Europeans, and then possibly even the 27th. Well, it would be a floating weekend. It would be a floating weekend right in the middle of January. Because
Joe, you know what will happen? They'll all go to the 26th one about how terrible it is, and they won't go to the one that says how great it is. And how can you have 2 days? It's terrible. No, it's great. It's terrible. No, it's great. It won't work. But Michael Kroger, you know, it seems to me it can be Australia Day, because that marks the day when we first had to all just get along, people of different races. That's when the whole thing had to start. Some of it was bad. Ultimately, it is great. Look at how we're going now. Isn't that the day you should stick to?
Well, I think so, Andrew. I mean, look at the society we have. We have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. We have the best medicines. We have the best universities. We have a free media. We have a democratic parliament. We have low levels of violence. We have economic success and freedom. We have low rates of child mortality. We have high literacy rates. You can go on and on as to what a great country Australia is, and we should not be afraid to celebrate the great country that this is. And, you know, you hear all these people, when a Bush or a Reagan got elected, all those actors and activists have said they're going to leave the country if the Republicans win the presidency. Well, they never did. But, you know, you're welcome to go to, you know, some of the other countries. If people think this is such a despicable place to live, well, there'd be plenty of countries who would love to have people as residents, new residents, if they feel that this is such a terrible place that they can't bear to stay here, Andrew.
But no, you've got France. They celebrate Bastille Day, which was about, you know, killing people, the French Revolution. They've got a national anthem about killing people. They don't seem to have they should have a bit more shame than us, I tell you what. But they get away with it. I don't get it. Can you tell me, Joe Hildebrand, why the Prime Minister will not go to Alice Springs?
Yeah, look, I don't know. He hasn't told me. I think he probably feels like he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he goes, it will look like a political stunt, and he's doing it just to restore, you know, in response to critics who won't be satisfied with him anyway. It's the sort of thing that you really want to do off your own bat. If you're doing it just because people are telling you to, you're therefore just sort of highlighting the fact that you were amiss in the first place by not being there. But to take up what Michael said earlier, and I completely agree, people should be incredibly grateful. I know I feel incredibly fortunate and grateful, not necessarily proud to be an Australian because I had no choice as to where I was born, but extremely lucky and glad that I was. But all those things, the high literacy rates, the high numeracy rates, the high employment rates, the high standards of living, none of that applies to many Indigenous communities in remote areas where they are still living in literally third world conditions. That is what we are seeing in Alice Springs. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily just a matter of choice, but it is a problem. It is a problem that exists.
If you don't send your child to school, I don't know what you can expect.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of those kids.
I've been on the.
A lot of parents do try their best in those areas, but the thing is, the truancy rate, the absenteeism rate is terrible. If you don't send your kids to the school, what do you expect?
I have been on the school run around those town camps in Alice Springs. There's a school there that sends a bus to actually collect all the kids. Most of the time, the parents do put the bus on them. I mean, they don't have, firstly, a lot of them don't have their own transport. They don't have a car per family. The accommodation is woeful. You see, I've seen a lot of alcoholism firsthand. I saw when we were picking the kids up, you know, one of the older kids already drunk at what I think was about 8 o'clock in the morning. These are big endemic problems. But it's not just a matter of, that's right, and you've got to fix them, and we do have to fix them. We have to fix the acute problems, and that may be booze bans for as long as it takes, or even
in this we, I always think, yeah, but it's all we is the non-Aboriginal Australia. I'd like to see, I'm prepared to take my part of the responsibility. I'm desperate to cure these things, but I don't see enough of the other side. There's also the Aboriginal community itself. And I'm not the only one to say it here. A lot of Aboriginal people, leaders say there's got to be some self-responsibility. By the way, Michael Kroger, Marion Scrimgeour, Federal Labor MP, Aboriginal today, said the government should actually make people safe in their homes before asking them to vote on The Voice this year. Now, the Albanese government has been furiously, you know, spinning since then. Scrimgeour's had to release a statement saying, I really do believe in The Voice. And you had, you know, Labor MP Patrick Gorman come on Sky saying, oh, no, The Voice is very important. She loves The Voice. But this is a big moment in the debate, isn't it?
Mate, I think, Andrew, I think it is. I mean, if Scott Morrison had refused to go to Alice Springs, every left-wing journalist in this country would be calling on him to give a national apology. Oh, you're going to apologise for not going, you know, Prime Minister. I mean, Morrison and our Liberal Prime Ministers are asked to apologise every 5 minutes for things that they don't go to. Well, it's time for Albo to issue a national apology to this country for not going to Alice Springs as the leader of our country to try and see what's going on and do something for himself. It's all very well to go to floods and disasters. That's great. But this is a situation where people's lives are seriously at risk on a daily basis. Kids are roaming the streets, as we've seen. Albo should go there immediately. But I'll tell you, Andrew, there's no chance of him going there. Why? Because Albanese and his team are turning a blind eye to Aboriginal truancy, domestic violence, alcoholism, rape, the denigration of the Aboriginal the family. You know, they're turning a blind eye to this, and any focus or attention on what is really happening in a lot of these communities would take away from this sort of, you know, this sort of lovely view that we can have more Aboriginal people in Canberra, joining the privileged classes of those sitting in Parliament House and advising on things that need to be done. when the real tragedy in these communities, as Jacinta Price says, as Warren Mundine says, is actually in the Aboriginal communities. No, Andrew, Albanese doesn't want to bring any attention to this whatsoever.
No.
And shame on you, Prime Minister, shame on you.
Well, it's the wider picture is this. He doesn't want to disturb the idea that all the problem really is whites being mean and racist and just saying sorry and just changing constitution and bingo, it's solved. It is not that. This is a distraction. This is the easy thing to do, you know, because he doesn't want to do the hard work. Joe Hildebrand,
I would just
Michael
say,
Kroger, thank you both.
Okay. I'll just
Sorry,
say quickly,
Joe, we'll have to get you on again later.
Okay, no worries.
Finish that thought. Thank you, guys.
No worries.